Good evening, everyone. I'm Akush Lapinder. Former sports minister Dr. Danny Johnson is not letting up. You see, he's holding strong in his convictions that there was no impropriety on his part in anything he's done in public life. This, of course, on the heels of an Auditor General's report into the National Sports Authority that found that expenditures to support stadium readiness upgrades lacked transparency, that strategic management was inadequate, and that contracts lacked formalized process.
But that is something always for the audit department of the government to be involved in on an ongoing basis. That's every year. That's not 10 years later. Every year they're to look at all the operations you're doing and improve operational efficiency. That's not a ministerial portfolio job.
So you're saying that the Auditor General's department dropped the ball as well?
If they have noticed that from 2011, well, they should insinuate in that process.
The report also found that the procurement process lacked levels of delegation authority and as a result, under the contract, may not have been properly monitored to ensure that deliverables were fulfilled before payments were given. To that, the former PLP cabinet minister reasoned that can be the case in any procurement process.
With what we are doing, we put on a number of mega events, Jones. When those things are coming and we have international standards to reach. The Interpol is coming, at one point with the World Relays, and then another major event. We had World Cup Beach Soccer. We had Iran and Israel sitting about 15 feet apart from each other in our stands. But we had to get some security measures in place to meet their standard of what they do at that level. At that point, I'm not sure what procurement levels they would have to get done, but you got to get that done, right? And I don't think when they really look at it, and I want them to look at it because I want it to be cleared. I want them to see what had to be done under the circumstances, and it was well done.
Now, the report also noted that a fencing contract for the National Stadium was signed on February 16, 2014. A company was selected based on the lowest bid of $275,000. However, the attached invoice totaled $308,000. That's an additional $33,500 or 12.3% over the approved contract. Additionally, none of the invoices were authorized by an agent of the company. To that, Dr. Johnson says those types of things do not come before a minister. However, in a letter to the editor of the Nassau Guardian, the former Youth, Sports and Culture Minister accepted full and unmitigated responsibility for the conduct of affairs, administration and protocols of the ministry during his tenure. The Prime Minister says an investigation will be launched into the matter. Dr. Johnson's comments came while appearing as a guest on the Love 97 show On Point with host Wendell Jones. In other news this evening, water and sewage executives and labor and union officials to head back to the table tomorrow in another attempt to get to the bottom of a standoff that last week led to a two-day industrial action, or an illegal strike, as WSC Chairman Adrian Gibson termed it in the House of Assembly last week. Now, Wednesday's meetup follows one on Monday that saw former Bahamas Christian Council President Reverend Ranford Patterson and Labor Director John Pinder serving as mediators. Here's what Mr. Pinder said came out of yesterday's negotiations.
That meeting had to do with the two suspensions. The corporation was supposed to conclude those matters, and the member that was suspended that was supposed to return to work today, he did come to work today, but some added information is necessary now for the corporation to really make a clear decision on that. The one who was suspended for 5 days, the chairman and the board has agreed to reduce that suspension to 3 days. It appears though the union is still not satisfied with that. They wanted it to, they just wanted him to squash it, indicating that there was no policy as relates to the property of the corporation versus the premises itself.
Now, also at issue is the claim that WSC employee phone conversations are being recorded.
In addition to a very serious one that the corporation had persons following members after they get off to their homes. We had no substantial evidence to suggest any of that happened. But the corporation still agreed to allow, as requested by the managerial union for the police department to come and do a sweep to determine if there were any hidden devices or any.
As for pay cuts for those involved in last week's sit-out, the labor director said this.
That was not negotiable according to the chairman and the board. They were not negotiating the pay cuts. It appears though they are prepared to go ahead with pay cuts. But I said to the union president, that's a negotiating point that he can use because the corporation needs something from him. And he doesn't want his members to get cut so they can make a trade there. He'll have to negotiate that. That one is out of my jurisdiction.
There's also a clause in both unions' industrial agreements that speak to employees being off 4 consecutive days. This, he says, leads to automatic dismissal. Mr. Pinder says the working relationship between both sides needs improvement. Another deadline issued for the relocation of the General Post Office. Minister responsible, Renwood Wells, now putting the new date as the 3rd week in May. This based on Mr. Wells' estimation that construction at the new Town Center Mall location is 99% complete.
The executive offices are done, the post office boxes are in, the warehouse is completed, the air conditioning unit is in, the electricals are installed, the cafeteria is up and running, the post office bank has been up and running. Our issue is we are now having to install what you would know as an engineer, the low voltage design, which has to do with really the CCTV cameras, the data links. So after those wires would have been pulled by the contractor, BTC has to come in and bring in its telephones and hook up its telephones to the requisite desks, and Cable Bahamas would have to come in and run its cable line.
Now, according to the minister, as agreed, the contractor is paying for all construction works at the site and the government for the new furniture at a cost of $70,000, along with a $130,000 high voltage design. The progress report comes a few weeks after the opposition toured the new location, at the time noting that it seemed far from complete. Minister Wells says there's been a complete turnaround.
What they saw, as I said earlier, there were aspects of the post office that could not be completed because we needed to have the boxes installed. When they were there, the boxes were still in boxes. We installed those boxes in a matter of 2.5 days over a weekend. So the boxes are completely installed. I saw someone who snuck into the post office and took a video of it, believing that they were going to find something that was untoward. And what was put out there to the public, the comments in social media was very positive. Folks were surprised at what they saw.
Now, a new location and furniture, that's one thing. Having sufficient workers, another. To that, Minister Wells said additional employees will be hired in the upcoming budget period.
We're going to requisitely staff the post office, as is a number of departments and authorities that happen to come under the Ministry of Transport, whether it's the Port Authority, whether it's the Road Traffic Department, whether it's the Met Office, whether it's local government. All of these agencies that happen to be under my remit in varying degrees is excessively understaffed. And where we have some staff more than others is areas where really we could do without. And so what we need is persons in the executive management, and we need some line staff, and we're going to fix that.
In 2012, revenue sourced from the post office was around $5 or $6 million. Today, that's dropped to about $2 million. Minister Wells says they're looking to again increase that figure with a modernized post office. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
Of the news was brought to you by Alive.